when a little girl leaned in to whisper something to a police K9. No one expected the dog would suddenly bolt, dragging officers into a race against time. What seemed like an innocent moment at a school safety demonstration turned into the breakthrough that would crack open a case that had stumped investigators for weeks. The bond between a child's pure intuition and a dog's unwavering instinct was about to uncover a truth that would leave an entire community shaken to its core. And it all started with 5 whispered words that only Rex could hear. The autumn breeze carried laughter across Lincoln Elementary's playground as Officer Mike Reed introduced Rex, his German Shepherd partner, to a crowd of wide-eyed third graders. The golden leaves crunched beneath their feet as children gathered in a semicircle, their faces glowing with excitement. It was supposed to be a routine community outreach day, showing kids how K9 units help keep their neighborhoods safe while building trust between law enforcement and the community's youngest members. Rex stood proudly beside Officer Reed, his dark coat gleaming in the October sunlight, ears alert and posture commanding respect. The children watched in awe as the dog responded to silent hand signals and verbal commands with military precision. For 5 years, this duo had been inseparable. Partners who had tracked missing persons, detected narcotics, and apprehended suspects across 3 counties. Rex can smell things we can't even imagine, Officer Reed explained, his voice carrying across the playground. His nose is like a superpower. He can find someone's scent from just a piece of clothing, even if they've been missing for days. 8-year-old Lily Morgan stood at the back of the group, quieter than her classmates. While other children gasped and whispered excitedly at demonstrations of Rex finding hidden objects and obeying complex commands, Lily's intense hazel eyes never left the dog's face. She didn't join in the chorus of oohs and ahs when Rex located a training device hidden in a tree 50 yards away. Instead, she clutched her worn purple backpack against her chest, knuckles white with tension. Something about her intensity made Officer Reed pause mid-sentence during his explanation of K9 training protocols. Officer Sandra Martinez, standing at the edge of the demonstration area, noticed it too. In 15 years on the force, she'd developed a 6th sense for when something wasn't quite right. She nudged her partner, Officer Donovan, and subtly nodded toward the solemn girl with braided hair and worn sneakers. "Would anyone like to meet Rex up close?" Officer Reed asked, expecting the usual rush of eager volunteers that always followed this question. Several hands shot up immediately, accompanied by excited pleas of, "Me! Me! Pick me!" But it was Lily who somehow reached Rex first, slipping through the crowd of her peers like a shadow. The playground fell silent as the small girl, with copper-colored braids, approached the powerful German Shepherd. Officers tensed, ready to intervene. Rex wasn't typically comfortable with strangers approaching suddenly, especially children with their unpredictable movements. Principal Watkins stepped forward nervously. "Perhaps we should..." But instead of backing away or showing any sign of aggression, Rex locked eyes with Lily. The connection between them was instant and inexplicable. The 85-pound working dog, trained to apprehend dangerous suspects, sat perfectly still as the diminutive third grader approached. The tension in his body melted away, replaced by an alertness that Officer Reed had only seen during their most important missions. "Can I tell him something?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible over the whisper of wind through the playground's towering oak trees. Officer Reed nodded, confused but curious. "Sure, but remember to move slowly. Keep your hands where he can see them." Mrs. Blackwell, Lily's teacher, watched with concern. Lily had always been different, quieter than the others, more observant, often lost in her own world. The child had been through more than most adults in her short life, and her behavior had grown increasingly withdrawn over the past few weeks. What happened next sent chills through everyone watching. Lily cupped her small hands around Rex's ear and whispered something only the dog could hear. The words were lost to the humans present, carried away by the autumn breeze. In that split second, Rex's entire demeanor transformed. His ears pricked forward sharply, body tensed like a coiled spring, and before anyone could react, he lunged forward with such force that Officer Reed nearly lost his grip on the reinforced leather leash. "Rex, heel!" he commanded, his authoritative voice ringing across the suddenly silent playground. But for the first time in their 4 years together, Rex ignored him completely. The dog strained against his restraint, barking with an urgency the officer had only heard during their most critical missions. The kind that meant life or death hung in the balance. Officer Reed's face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and concern. In 7 years as a K-9 handler, he'd never lost control of his partner in public. Rex had passed every certification with flying colors, had been commended for his discipline in chaotic situations. This behavior was unprecedented. "What did you say to him?" Officer Reed asked, muscles straining as he struggled to control his partner. Rex's powerful body pulled against the leash, his focus entirely fixed on the tree line that bordered the eastern edge of the school property. Lily stepped back, her small face suddenly pale as paper, freckles standing out starkly against her skin. Her eyes, wide with an emotion that looked disturbingly like fear, darted between the dog and the distant woods. "I just told him what I saw in the woods," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Behind the big rock where we're not supposed to play." 3 other officers rushed over as Rex's barking intensified, taking on a specific cadence that sent immediate recognition through Officer Reed's body. This wasn't random excitement or aggression. This was Rex's alert pattern, the precise bark and pause rhythm he used when he'd found what they were looking for. But they weren't looking for anything. Not today. Not here at an elementary school demonstration. "Something's wrong," Officer Reed announced, his voice cutting through the chaos as he made a split-second decision. "We need to secure the area and get these kids inside. Now." As teachers hurried to gather the frightened children, forming lines with practiced efficiency from monthly drills, Lily remained frozen in place. Unlike her peers, who buzzed with nervous excitement at the unexpected drama, she watched Rex with knowing eyes that seemed far too old for her 8 years. Officer Martinez approached her gently. "Honey, what exactly did you see in the woods?" Lily's answer was lost in the commotion, but the look that passed between the officers spoke volumes. Within minutes, 2 more patrol cars pulled into the school parking lot, lights flashing but sirens silent. What Lily whispered would lead police to a discovery they never expected to make. One that would change their town forever and prove that sometimes the most important truths come from the most unexpected sources. The fluorescent lights of Lincoln Elementary's conference room cast harsh shadows across Chief Warren's face as he stared down Officer Reed. Outside the windows, dusk was settling over the school grounds. The playground now empty and cordoned off with yellow police tape that fluttered in the evening breeze. The distant wail of a siren somewhere in town only heightened the tension that had settled over the hastily assembled crisis team. "So let me get this straight," Chief Warren said, rubbing his temples where gray hair had started to overtake the black. His weathered face, lined from 27 years in law enforcement, showed equal parts skepticism and concern. "You want to deploy 3 K-9 units, request backup from county, and potentially call in state resources because an 8-year-old whispered something to your dog? Do you have any idea how that's going to sound to the commissioner?" Officer Reed stood his ground, still in full tactical gear, Rex sitting attentively at his side. The German shepherd's ears remained perked forward, his body tense with the same alertness he displayed since the playground incident. Occasionally, his dark eyes would drift toward the windows facing the eastern woods, a low whine escaping his throat. "With all due respect, sir, this isn't about what the girl said. This is about Rex's response. In 7 years, I've never seen him react like this," Reed explained, his voice steady despite the knot forming in his stomach. "Rex is certified in human remains detection, narcotics, and search and rescue. His false alert rate is less than 0.2%, the lowest in the department's history." Around the oval conference table sat the hastily assembled response team. Detective Simmons from Major Crimes, his tie loosened and coffee cup perpetually in hand. Officer Martinez, who specialized in crimes against children, her notebook already filled with observations about Lily Morgan. The school principal, Dr. Watkins, looking increasingly distressed as he checked his phone for messages from concerned parents. And 2 additional K-9 handlers who had been called in from patrol, Officers Chen and Rodriguez, both still dusty from training exercises at the academy fields. "Dogs get overstimulated, Mike," Detective Simmons said with a dismissive wave, coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim of his department-issued mug. "Especially around kids. You know that better than anyone. Remember the Thompson case? That bloodhound led us straight to a hamburger wrapper instead of the suspect." Reed shook his head firmly. This wasn't overstimulation. Rex gave his person find signal, the specific 3-bark pattern we've trained for locating missing individuals. He's only done that when he's detected human scent in search and rescue operations. And the Thompson case was different. That handler had only 8 months' experience. Rex and I have been together for 7 years and worked 43 successful recoveries. "Could have been a squirrel," Officer Donovan suggested from his position near the door, not looking up from his notebook where he was doodling what appeared to be a cartoon dog chasing its tail. "Or maybe the kid had bacon for breakfast. Dogs go nuts for bacon." A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the room, but died quickly when Reed didn't join in. The tension was palpable as the minutes ticked by on the wall clock, its mechanical clicking seeming unnaturally loud in the charged atmosphere. Officer Chen, one of the other K-9 handlers, cleared her throat. "For what it's worth, I've worked with Reed and Rex on joint operations. That dog doesn't false alert. If Reed says something triggered a trained response, I'm inclined to believe him." Principal Watkins adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and cleared his throat. "I should mention that we've had no reports of any missing children in our district. All students are accounted for, and we've had no unauthorized adults on campus according to our security protocols. Our attendance records are meticulously maintained, and our perimeter security was upgraded just last summer after the state grant came through." "What about the Keller case?" Martinez interjected suddenly, causing the room to fall silent. She slid a file folder across the table, crime scene photos partially visible. 2 counties over. The 10-year-old who disappeared walking home from soccer practice 3 weeks ago. Emma Keller, last seen by her coach at approximately 6:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. No witnesses to the abduction, no physical evidence left behind. Chief Warren's expression darkened as he pushed the file away without opening it. "That's 40 miles from here. There's no connection to our jurisdiction. County has been handling that investigation with FBI support." "And the Peterson boy from Riverside?" Martinez continued, undeterred, pulling another file from her bag. "Jason Peterson, age 9, missing since last month. Both cases have gone cold. Both children vanished without witnesses. Both were last seen near wooded areas, adjacent to public recreation facilities. Reed nodded gratefully toward Martinez. Sir, what if there is a connection we're missing? The woods behind the school extend for miles, connecting to state forest land. It's never been thoroughly searched because there was never a reason to. But Rex is giving us a reason now. The chief's phone buzzed, providing a momentary reprieve from the mounting tension. He glanced at the screen, then back at Reed with narrowed eyes. The fading daylight through the windows cast long shadows across his face, deepening the lines of concern. Where's the girl now? This Lily? With her aunt in the library, Martinez answered, closing her case files. She's her legal guardian since the parents' accident last year. The girl seems reluctant to say more, but she's not changing her story either. I've spoken with her twice now, and her account remains consistent, which is unusual for a child her age under stress. Detective Simmons leaned forward, the legs of his chair scraping against the linoleum floor. And what exactly is her story? What did she actually say to anyone other than the dog? That's just it, Reed said, frustration evident in his voice as he ran a hand through his short-cropped hair. She won't tell us what she whispered to Rex. Says she's scared and will only talk to the dog. According to her teacher, Mrs. Blackwell, Lily's been acting differently for about 2 weeks now. More withdrawn, having trouble focusing in class, drawing disturbing pictures during art period. Officer Rodriguez spoke up for the first time. Disturbing how? Martinez pulled out her phone, scrolled through several photos, and placed it on the table. The school counselor took pictures. They're mostly forest scenes, with what appears to be a dark figure partially hidden among trees. No clear features, but definitely humanoid. The officers leaned in, studying the crude crayon drawings with professional interest. The dark figure appeared in each one, sometimes closer to the foreground, sometimes barely visible behind thick scribbles of green and brown. Kids draw monsters all the time, Simmons muttered, though his expression had grown more serious. They do, Martinez agreed. But they don't usually give their monsters exact locations. Look at this one. She's labeled it, behind the big rock where the ground is soft. That's oddly specific for an imaginary threat. The chief's eyebrows shot up as he glanced between the phone and Reed. You want me to authorize a major search operation based on a conversation between a child and a dog that none of us heard, and some crayon drawings that could be nothing more than nightmares? Reed's hand dropped instinctively to Rex's head, fingers threading through the thick fur. The German shepherd hadn't relaxed since the playground incident, remaining in a state of alert that his handler recognized from their most serious operations. When Reed's fingers touched his ear, the dog's eyes locked with his, a silent communication passing between them that transcended words. I'm telling you, something's out there, Reed insisted, his voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow carried more weight than if he'd shouted. Rex doesn't make mistakes like this. Not ever. And Lily Morgan doesn't strike me as a child seeking attention. Quite the opposite. She seems terrified of the attention she's getting now. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows of the old school building. Shadows lengthened across the empty playground as day surrendered to night. In the distance, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising rain before morning. Officer Chen checked her watch. We're losing daylight fast. If we're going to do any kind of search today, we need to move now. Principal Watkins glanced nervously at his own watch, an antique timepiece that had belonged to his father. We have parents calling nonstop wanting to know what's happening. The rumor mill is already working overtime. 3 families have already shown up demanding to take their children home early. If we don't give them answers soon, Fine, Chief Warren interrupted, holding up his hands in surrender. The weight of responsibility visibly settled on his shoulders as he made his decision. Here's what we're going to do. Reed, you and Rex can do a preliminary sweep of the immediate wooded area. Martinez, you go with them. You've built some rapport with the girl and might get more out of her on sight. Chen, you and your K9 partner back him up. Standard search pattern, no more than half-a-mile radius from school property. If, and only if, you find something concrete, then we'll talk about expanding the search. Reed straightened, relief washing over his face. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, the chief warned, his finger jabbing the air for emphasis. You've got 2 hours before sunset. If this turns out to be nothing but a wild goose chase, it's going in your permanent record, and I mean that. The department can't afford to waste resources chasing shadows, especially with budget reviews coming up next month. Dr. Watkins adjusted his tie nervously. And what should I tell the parents? Tell them we're conducting a routine safety sweep of the school grounds, the chief replied smoothly. Standard procedure following our demonstration. No need to cause a panic. As the meeting disbanded, officers gathering their equipment and checking radios, Detective Simmons caught up, with Reed in the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering intermittently, casting strange patterns on the children's artwork lining the walls. You're really sticking your neck out on this one, Mike, Simmons said, keeping his voice low as school staff passed by. Better be sure about what you're doing. Warren's not the forgiving type when it comes to resources, and the commissioner's been looking for any excuse to cut the K9 program's funding. Reed watched as Rex paced restlessly at the end of his leash, the dog's attention still fixed on the windows facing the woods. Every few seconds, the shepherd's nostrils would flare, testing the air currents flowing through the building's ventilation system. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, he replied quietly, checking his tactical gear and the extra batteries for his flashlight. Something or someone is out there, and whatever it is, it's exactly where that little girl said it would be. Martinez approached, now wearing a tactical vest over her uniform, her long hair pulled back in a tight bun. I just spoke with Lily's aunt again. She mentioned something interesting. Lily takes a different route home from school these days, refuses to walk past the eastern edge of the playground, even though it would save her 10 minutes. Started about 2 weeks ago. Reed and Simmons exchanged glances. 2 weeks, Reed repeated. Right around when her behavior changed, according to her teacher. Exactly. Martinez nodded, her expression grim. And here's the kicker. She told her aunt she takes the long way home because the man in the woods watches the children who take the short way. The aunt thought she was just processing grief from losing her parents through imagination. Simmons's dismissive attitude had evaporated, replaced by the focused intensity that had made him the department's top detective. Does she have a description of this man? Nothing specific, Martinez replied. Just that he's tall and stands very still. Like a tree that can walk, was how she put it to her aunt. Reed felt a chill that had nothing to do with the school's aggressive air conditioning. Let's gear up. I want Lily to show us exactly where she saw this man, even if she has to whisper it to Rex again. What the officers didn't know was that Lily Morgan had seen something no adult had noticed, something that had been hiding in plain sight for weeks. Her whispered secret would lead them into darkness deeper than they could imagine, and test the limits of both human and canine instinct in ways none of them were prepared for. As they prepared to enter the woods, none of them realized they were already being watched by eyes that had learned the art of perfect patience. The eastern edge of Lincoln Elementary's property ended abruptly, where civilization surrendered to wilderness. Tall oaks and maples stood like ancient sentinels, their branches swaying gently in the early evening breeze, creating a natural boundary between the orderly world of education and the primal chaos of nature. What had seemed picturesque in daylight now took on a foreboding quality as shadows deepened between the trees. The late October air carried the earthy scent of decomposing leaves and the promise of the season's first frost. "This is where she said to look?" Officer Chen asked, adjusting the body camera clip to her tactical vest and checking that its indicator light showed it was recording properly. Her Belgian Malinois, Sadie, strained at her lead, eager to begin working. The dog's muscular body quivered with anticipation, her training having taught her that the equipment and tension in the air meant important work lay ahead. Reed nodded, checking his equipment one final time. Radio secure, flashlight batteries fresh, sidearm accessible but secured, first aid kit in place. According to Martinez, Lily mentioned a big rock where the ground is soft. She marked it on several of her drawings, always in the same location, always with the same dark figure nearby. The search team had assembled at the tree line, Reed with Rex, Chen with Sadie, Martinez, and 2 patrol officers, Ramirez and Jackson, for additional security. Chief Warren had reluctantly authorized the use of the department's thermal imaging equipment, a concession that showed he wasn't entirely dismissing Reed's concerns despite his earlier skepticism. The expensive device had only been purchased last year after a county grant came through, and Warren was typically hesitant to deploy it for anything less than confirmed emergencies. "There's a creek about a quarter-mile in," Officer Ramirez said, consulting the topographical map displayed on his tablet. The blue glow illuminated his face in the gathering dusk. Several large rock formations along its banks could be what she's referring to. The area floods during heavy rains, which would explain the soft ground. Officer Jackson, a 20-year veteran with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, adjusted his utility belt with practiced ease. "I used to fish that creek as a kid. There's one boulder bigger than the others. Locals call it Sentinel Rock. Kids used to dare each other to spend the night there." Reed turned to Martinez, who had been speaking with Lily and her aunt while the team prepared. "Any luck getting more details from Lily?" The officer shook her head, her expression troubled. "She's completely shut down. Won't make eye contact. Barely speaks above a whisper. The school counselor says it's consistent with trauma response. Whatever she saw, or thinks she saw, frightened her badly enough to trigger a protective mechanism. Classic signs of childhood PTSD." "Could she be making it up?" Jackson asked, voicing the question they'd all considered. "Kids her age have active imaginations." Martinez shook her head firmly. "I've interviewed hundreds of children in my career. Lily isn't displaying attention-seeking behavior, quite the opposite. She seems terrified of the attention she's getting now. And there's a consistency to her limited statements that fabrication typically lacks." "We're losing light fast," Chen observed, glancing at the darkening sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. Heavy clouds were moving in from the west, promising rain before morning. "If we're doing this, we should move now. Once those clouds block the moonlight, visibility's going to drop to near zero under this canopy." Reed made a final check of his radio and nodded to the team. "Standard search pattern. Chen and Sadie take the left flank, Rex and I will work the center, Martinez and Ramirez on the right. Jackson, you maintain position at our entry point as a fixed reference and relay point to headquarters. 20-foot spacing. Keep visual contact at all times. If anyone finds anything, and I mean anything unusual, radio immediately. No one investigates alone." What exactly are we looking for? Ramirez asked, securing his tablet in a waterproof pouch. Besides the rock, I mean. Reed hesitated. Anything that doesn't belong in these woods. Disturbed earth, unusual objects, anything that strikes you as out of place. Trust your instincts. They're usually right. As the team prepared to enter the woods, Principal Watkins approached with Lily's aunt, Ms. Morgan, a woman in her early 30s with the same copper hair as her niece, but with shadows of exhaustion beneath her eyes. She clutched a child's backpack, purple with silver stars, against her chest like a shield. "Officer Reed," Ms. Morgan called out, her voice tight with worry. "Lily's finally said something more. She insisted I give you this." She held out the backpack with trembling hands. "And she keeps repeating that the soft ground is important. She says he puts them in the soft ground when they're too tired to play anymore." A heavy silence fell over the group as Reed accepted the backpack. "Did she say who he is?" Martinez asked gently, moving closer to Ms. Morgan. Ms. Morgan shook her head, hugging herself against a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "No, but she drew this." She handed Martinez a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "She said Rex would understand, that he already knows what's there." Martinez unfolded the paper and studied it briefly before passing it to Reed. The crayon drawing showed the now familiar dark figure standing beside what appeared to be a large rock. But this time, there was something new. Several small, colorful shapes partially buried in scribbled brown earth at the figure's feet. "Those look like," Chen began, peering over Reed's shoulder, but didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to. They all recognized the crude but unmistakable shapes of small shoes protruding from the ground. Red sneakers, blue boots, pink sandals, each rendered with the simple directness of a child's hand, but unmistakable in their implication. Reed felt his mouth go dry as he opened the purple backpack. Inside was a child-sized flashlight, a small water bottle, and a worn teddy bear missing one eye. Attached to the bear's remaining ear was a note in a child's handwriting. "For them. They get scared in the dark." "Radio the chief," Reed said, his voice dropping to a professional calm that belied the adrenaline now coursing through his system. "Tell him we need the forensics team on standby. And contact the state police. We may need their ground-penetrating radar." "You think we're going to find bodies?" Ramirez asked, his voice dropping to a whisper as he glanced toward Ms. Morgan, who was now speaking quietly with Principal Watkins several yards away. "I think we need to be prepared for anything," Reed replied, his eyes meeting Rex's alert gaze. The German shepherd's focus had intensified at the scent of the backpack, confirming Reed's growing suspicion that they were dealing with something far more serious than an overactive imagination. "Let's move out. Ms. Morgan, we'll contact you as soon as we have anything concrete to report." The forest seemed to swallow them as they crossed the invisible boundary between the maintained school grounds and the wild woods beyond. The temperature dropped perceptibly under the dense canopy, the last rays of sunlight filtering through leaves in dappled patterns that shifted with each breeze. The smell changed too. Richer, damper, with undertones of decay that were part of the natural cycle of the forest, but now carried more ominous associations. For 20 minutes, they moved methodically through the forest, the only sounds their footsteps on the leaf-strewn ground and the occasional crackle of radio communication as Jackson confirmed their coordinates from his position at the perimeter. Both dogs worked with focused intensity, noses sampling the air currents, ears swiveling to catch any unusual sounds. "The creek should be just ahead," Ramirez called softly, consulting his GPS. We're approaching the area marked on the topographical map. It was Rex who alerted first. The change was subtle. A stiffening in his posture, a slight acceleration in his breathing, a low whine that Reed felt through the leash more than heard. Reed recognized the signs immediately, having worked with the dog through countless operations. "He's got something," he announced quietly, giving Rex the command to lead. The German shepherd moved forward with purpose, no longer casting for scent, but tracking a specific trail. His training had taught him to maintain silence when tracking, but his body language spoke volumes to his experienced handler. The team adjusted their formation, following Rex's lead as he navigated through increasingly dense undergrowth. The ground began to slope downward, and the distant sound of running water confirmed they were approaching the creek Ramirez had mentioned. The soil beneath their feet changed from the loamy forest floor to a sandier mixture, evidence of past flooding. "There," Chen said suddenly, pointing ahead where her flashlight beam caught the edge of something massive. "That must be the rock from Lily's drawing." A massive boulder, easily 15 feet tall, rose from the forest floor like a monument. Years of erosion had carved natural steps into one side, making it possible to climb. At its base, the ground transitioned from leaf-covered soil to a sandier mixture, evidence of occasional flooding from the nearby creek. In the beam of their flashlights, it took on an almost otherworldly quality, its surface mottled with lichen and moss that appeared black in the artificial light. Both dogs were now in full alert mode, pulling toward the area behind the boulder where the ground appeared disturbed. Recent rainfall had left the soil soft and muddy, and even to the untrained eye, it was clear that the earth had been moved relatively recently. "Hold position," Reed ordered, raising his hand in a gesture that stopped the team in their tracks. "Chen, keep Sadie back. I want to check this first. We need to preserve any potential evidence." With careful steps, Reed approached the area that had captured Rex's attention. The dog's behavior had shifted from excited discovery to a more somber cadence, the specific pattern he used when detecting human remains. 3 distinct barks, followed by a sitting position, eyes never leaving the target area. It was a change Reed had seen only a handful of times in their years together, and each instance had led to the discovery of a body. Reed felt his heart pounding as he played his flashlight over the ground. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, just mud and fallen leaves. But as he moved closer, he noticed subtle depressions in the earth, areas where the ground had settled differently than natural erosion would explain. Rectangular depressions, each about 4 to 5 feet in length, arranged in an almost orderly pattern. "Martinez," he called softly, motioning her forward while the others maintained their positions. "I need your thermal imager." She handed him the device, a handheld unit that resembled a sophisticated camera. Reed swept it slowly across the area, its digital display showing what the naked eye couldn't detect: temperature differentials beneath the surface. Several distinct rectangular shapes appeared as cooler areas against the warmer surrounding soil. "Call it in," Reed said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his system. "Tell the chief we need the full forensics team and county support, and get Detective Simmons out here now. Tell him to bring the state's cadaver dogs for confirmation." "What exactly am I telling them we found?" Martinez asked, already reaching for her radio, her expression grim in the harsh light of her flashlight. Reed took a deep breath, looking from the thermal image to Rex's alert posture and back to the disturbed earth. The implications were unmistakable, but he needed to remain professional, to follow protocol despite the horror unfolding before them. "Tell them we've found what appears to be multiple burial sites, And based on the dimensions, he paused, the weight of his next words hanging in the air. They're consistent with children. As Martinez relayed the information, the forest around them grew unnaturally quiet, as if holding its breath. The last light of day faded completely, leaving them in a darkness broken only by their flashlights. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called, a lonely sound that seemed to echo the gravity of their discovery. Chen approached slowly, her flashlight beam joining Reed's to illuminate the area. "How many?" she asked quietly, professional training temporarily masking the emotion in her voice. Reed studied the thermal image again. "At least 5 distinct sites that I can see, possibly more extending beyond the range of this device." He gestured toward the creek bank where the ground sloped away. "We'll need the ground-penetrating radar to know for sure." Ramirez had moved to secure the perimeter, establishing a wider cordon around the site. "Should we start excavating?" he asked, already reaching for the folding shovel attached to his gear. "Negative," Reed replied firmly. "This is now a potential crime scene. We touch nothing until forensics arrives. Our job is to secure the area and maintain the chain of evidence." The radio crackled to life with Jackson's voice. "Reed, Chief Warren is en route with Detective Simmons and the forensics team. ETA 20 minutes. State police have been notified and are dispatching their special crimes unit." "Copy that," Reed responded, then turned to his team. "Set up a perimeter, 100-foot radius. No one enters except authorized personnel. Chen, take Sadie and do a sweep of the immediate surroundings. If there's anyone watching us, I want to know about it." As the team moved to their assigned tasks with the efficiency of their training, Reed remained by the disturbed earth, Rex sitting alertly by his side. He couldn't help but think of Lily Morgan and her whispered secret to his dog. What had she seen from her innocent perspective that the adults in her life had missed? How long had this horror been unfolding in their community, hidden just beyond the edge of civilization? Reed knelt beside one of the depressions, careful not to disturb anything, and noticed something partially buried at the edge of the disturbed soil. Using his penlight for closer illumination, he leaned forward without touching the ground. A small red fiber poked through the dirt, the same vibrant red as the sneakers in Lily's drawing. What they didn't yet realize was that Lily Morgan's whispered secret had led them to something far more extensive than they had imagined. The small clearing behind the boulder was just the beginning, the first chapter in a story of horror that had been unfolding silently in their community for longer than any of them suspected. The soft ground held secrets that would shake their town to its foundations and change all their lives forever. And somewhere, watching from the shadows beyond the reach of their flashlights, the figure from Lily's drawings observed their discovery with cold calculation, deciding what to do about the people who had found his carefully hidden work. His sanctuary had been compromised, but he had contingency plans. He always did. After all, these weren't the first people to come looking. They were, however, the first to find anything. As the clouds finally obscured the moon completely, plunging the forest into deeper darkness, he slipped away through paths only he knew, leaving no trace of his presence. There would be time to address this intrusion. There would be time to start again elsewhere. There was always more soft ground to be found. The forest clearing transformed into a grim tableau of modern forensics over the next several hours. Portable floodlights cast harsh illumination over the scene, turning night into an artificial day that emphasized every detail with unforgiving clarity. The gentle sounds of the woodland night, rustling leaves, distant owl calls, the soft gurgle of the creek, were now drowned out by the mechanical hum of generators the crackle of radios, and the measured voices of professionals confronting horror with methodical precision. Chief Warren stood at the perimeter of the secured area, his weathered face set in grim lines as he surveyed the controlled chaos before him. The county forensics team had arrived in force, followed by the State Police Special Crimes Unit with their sophisticated equipment. Yellow evidence markers dotted the clearing like macabre flowers, each numbered tag representing another potential piece in a puzzle no one wanted to complete. "How many?" he asked as Detective Simmons approached, tablet in hand, the blue glow illuminating his face from below. "Ground-penetrating radar confirms 7 distinct burial sites." Simmons replied, his usual sardonic demeanor replaced by professional detachment. "Dr. Levine from the ME's office is supervising the excavation of the first one now." Warren nodded, his eyes tracking the movement of personnel around the boulder. "Timeline?" "Preliminary assessment suggests the most recent burial occurred within the last month. The oldest." Simmons paused, scrolling through the data on his tablet. "Dr. Levine estimates at least 3 years, possibly longer. We'll know more once we complete the excavations and get the remains to the lab." 3 years, Warren repeated, the implication settling heavily on his shoulders. 3 years of missing children that no one connected. Reed approached, having been relieved at the site by the forensics team after his initial discovery. Rex remained by his side, subdued now that his work was temporarily complete. The German shepherd's earlier alertness had given way to a quiet vigilance, as if he understood the gravity of what he had helped uncover. "Sir," Reed acknowledged, nodding to both Warren and Simmons. "They've begun recovering evidence from the first site." "What have they found?" Warren asked, though his expression suggested he already anticipated the answer. "Clothing fragments consistent with what was reported in the Keller case," Reed reported, his professional tone belying the emotion beneath. "Red sneakers with white laces. Emma Keller was wearing red Converse high tops when she disappeared." Warren closed his eyes briefly, a rare display of emotion from the typically stoic chief. "We need to notify her parents, but not until we have confirmation. DNA testing is already underway with samples from the Keller family," Simmons added. "Results should be back within 48 hours, with the state lab giving this priority status." The 3 men fell silent as they watched a team of forensic technicians carefully excavating one of the sites, their movements deliberate and respectful despite the clinical nature of their work. The scene was being documented from every angle. Photographs, videos, 3-dimensional scanning, creating a comprehensive record that would eventually become evidence. "What about the other sites?" Warren finally asked. "Any preliminary identifications?" Simmons consulted his tablet again. "Based on clothing and personal effects, we have potential matches to Jason Peterson from Riverside and Zoe Ramirez from Millfield. The other 4 remain unidentified at this stage." 7 children, Warren said softly. 7 families destroyed. "And we might have never found them if not for Lily Morgan and her drawings," Reed added. "And Rex," he added, his hand dropping instinctively to the dog's head. "Speaking of the Morgan girl," Simmons interjected, "Martinez has been working with her and the child psychologist. She's starting to open up a bit more." "What's she saying?" Warren asked, his attention sharpening. "She first noticed the man about 3 weeks ago, watching the playground from the tree line during recess. She described him as standing still like a tree, but sometimes moving. None of the teachers or monitors noticed him. Kids see things adults miss," Reed observed. "They're closer to the ground, have different sight lines, and they haven't learned to dismiss what doesn't fit their expectations. She says he wore dark clothes and had a helper, Simmons continued, frowning at his notes. A partner? Warren asked sharply. We're looking for 2 suspects? That's unclear. The way Lily describes it, the helper might not be human. She mentioned it being small and moving quickly. Could be a dog or some other animal. Or could be part of her processing mechanism. Children often displace trauma onto imaginary figures. Their conversation was interrupted as Dr. Levine, the county medical examiner, approached. Her face mask hung around her neck, and despite the cool night air, perspiration beaded on her forehead from working under the intense lights. Chief, Warren, she acknowledged with a nod. We've completed the excavation of the first site. And? Warren prompted when she paused. Female child, approximately 10 years of age. Cause of death pending full autopsy. But preliminary examination shows a fracture to the occipital bone consistent with blunt force trauma. Her clinical description couldn't fully mask the compassion in her eyes. Red sneakers, blue jeans, white t-shirt with a unicorn design. Matches the description of Emma Keller. Warren nodded grimly. Time of death? Based on decomposition rates and soil conditions, I'd estimate between 3 and 4 weeks ago. She hesitated, then added, There's something else. We found this clutched in her hand. Dr. Levine held up an evidence bag containing what appeared to be a small, carved wooden figure. What is that? Simmons asked, leaning closer. It appears to be a hand-carved figurine of a dog, Dr. Levine replied. And it's not the only one. We've found similar carvings at 2 of the other excavation sites. Reed felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. He leaves them tokens. Trophies? Warren suggested. Or something else, Reed said, his mind working through the implications. The figurines might have significance beyond what we're seeing. Dr. Levine returned the evidence bag to a technician and removed her gloves. We'll know more once we complete the excavations and process all the evidence. But given what we're finding, I think it's safe to say we're dealing with a methodical killer who has been operating undetected for years. As if to punctuate her assessment, the clouds that had been threatening all evening finally released their burden. Rain began to fall, lightly at first, then with increasing intensity. The forensics teams quickly deployed protective tarps over the excavation sites, their movements urgent but still precise. We need to accelerate the recovery operation, Dr. Levine said, glancing at the darkening sky. This rain will compromise the scene if we don't move quickly. Warren turned to Simmons. Get every available officer out here. I want these remains recovered and secured before this weather destroys any evidence. As Simmons moved away to coordinate the expanded operation, Warren turned back to Reed. You did good work tonight. You and Rex both. Reed nodded, accepting the rare compliment from his superior. What happens now? Now we hunt, Warren replied, his voice taking on a hardness that Reed had seldom heard. Somewhere out there is a predator who's been stealing children from our communities for years, and now he knows we've found his graveyard. The rain intensified, drumming against the tarps and turning the forest floor to mud. The floodlights created an eerie effect as raindrops caught the light, seeming to fall in slow motion around the grim activity in the clearing. He'll run, Reed said with certainty. Or worse, he'll try to cover his tracks. That's why, as of this moment, we're initiating the largest manhunt in this county's history. Warren stated, every officer, every resource, every minute until we find him. What neither of them could know was that their quarry was already adapting to this new reality. Miles away, in a nondescript house on a quiet street, a man methodically packed essential items into a duffel bag. On his workbench lay several small wooden figurines in various stages of completion, each carved with exquisite detail. Beside them, a newspaper clipping about an upcoming children's festival in a town 2 counties over. He worked unhurriedly, despite the urgency of his situation. After all, he had evaded detection for years. And while this particular chapter was ending, he had always known it would. That was why he had contingency plans, new hunting grounds already scouted, new identities prepared, new opportunities awaiting. As he closed his bag and took one last look around the space that had been his sanctuary, he allowed himself a small smile. They had found his garden, yes. But they hadn't found him, and they didn't yet understand the most important thing of all, why he did what he did. But they would learn. In time, they would all learn. The hunt had begun. The rain continued to pour, drenching the forest and turning the ground into a treacherous, muddy terrain. The atmosphere was thick with tension as the forensic team worked tirelessly to recover the remains. While Chief Warren coordinated the manhunt from an improvised command center set up in the parking lot of Lincoln Elementary. Officers milled about with urgency, their radios crackling with updates as they prepared to fan out across the area. A sense of grim determination filled the air. They were no longer just responding to a call. They were hunting a predator who had evaded justice for too long. Reed stood near the command center, his mind racing through the details of their current situation. The recovery of Emma Keller's remains had brought a chilling clarity to the case, but it also raised countless questions. How many children had vanished over the years? How many families had been torn apart by this monster? And most pressing, where was he now? "Reed," called Detective Simmons, rushing over with a clipboard in hand. "We're deploying search teams into the surrounding areas. We need everyone to keep an eye out for anything unusual, especially any vehicles that don't belong in the neighborhoods." "Got it," Reed replied, his gaze shifting to the darkening horizon. "What about the roadblocks? Every major route in and out of the county is being monitored. We've got eyes on all highways and back roads. If he tries to flee, we'll know." Reed nodded, but a sense of unease gnawed at him. What if he's already moved? He could be hiding in plain sight, blending in with the crowd. He's not a novice. He knows how to evade detection. Simmons sighed. "That's why we're using the child abduction alert system. Every officer is on high alert, and we're sending out notifications to every local news outlet. If anyone sees something, anything, they need to report it immediately." Just then, Martinez approached, her expression grave. "I've been speaking with Lillian, the psychologist. She's starting to remember more, but it's fragmented. We might need to bring her in for a more detailed interview once we have a secure place for her." Reed felt a surge of urgency. Whatever she knows could be the key to finding him. If she saw him, if she remembers more about the helper, we need to get that information fast. Martinez nodded. She mentioned the man had a strange smell, like wet earth and something sharp, almost like metal. And she keeps drawing that wooden dog figure. "Figures," Reed muttered, recalling the carved objects found at the excavation site. "We need to figure out what those symbolize for him. They might lead us to his next move." As the rain began to taper off, Reed gathered the team for a briefing. Officers stood in a loose circle, their expressions a mix of determination and concern. Warren, now wearing a rain slicker, took charge. "Listen up, everyone. We're facing a serious threat. The suspect has demonstrated the ability to evade capture. Our priority is to locate him before he can disappear again." He paused for a moment, scanning the faces of the officers. "We've got a community in fear, and it's our job to protect them. Remember, this isn't just about solving a crime. It's about ensuring the safety of every child in this county. We're looking for someone who has been operating under the radar for far too long." Reed stepped forward. "We're deploying search teams into the woods and surrounding neighborhoods. Each team will be equipped with flashlights and radios. Stay in contact, and if you see anything that looks suspicious, report it immediately. Remember the details from Lily's descriptions. Look for anyone who seems out of place, strange behavior, unusual vehicles, or anyone lingering too long near schools or parks." With a nod of agreement, the officers broke off into their respective teams, setting off in different directions. Reed felt a renewed sense of purpose as he and Martinez teamed up to search the southern perimeter of the wooded area where the remains had been found. "Let's check the creek," Martinez suggested as they made their way through the underbrush. "If he's been hiding out here, he might have left something behind or even found a way to dispose of evidence." "Good idea. We should also look for any trails or paths that seem less traveled. He might have a hideout nearby," Reed replied, keeping his flashlight trained on the ground. The rain had made the earth soft and muddy, leaving clear footprints that could lead them to potential hiding places. As they approached the creek, the sound of rushing water grew louder. The moon had begun to peek through the clouds, casting a silvery glow over the landscape. Reed squinted ahead, noticing a series of rocks that jutted out of the water, a perfect spot for someone to hide or to wash away traces of their crime. "Look at this," Martinez called, pointing to a section of the bank where the mud was disturbed. "These footprints look fresh. They head toward those trees." Reed knelt down, examining the prints closely. They're small, maybe a child's size, but they're leading in the opposite direction. He followed the trail with his eyes, realizing it led deeper into the underbrush rather than back toward the road. "Could it be Lily's?" Martinez asked, her brow furrowed. "Maybe," Reed replied, his instincts kicking in. "Or it could be someone else entirely. We need to follow them." They moved cautiously, keeping their flashlights low to avoid drawing attention. The further they went, the thicker the vegetation became, and the dim light made it increasingly difficult to navigate. Reed's heart raced as they pressed on, the weight of the investigation bearing down on him. Suddenly, a low growl erupted from Rex, who had been quietly following them. The German shepherd's ears perked up, his body tense. "What is it, boy?" Reed asked, instinctively calming the dog with a hand on his side. Without warning, Rex took off, bounding deeper into the thicket. "Rex!" Reed shouted, scrambling after him. Martinez followed closely behind, her heart pounding in her chest. "Come on, Rex!" Reed yelled, pushing through the underbrush. The dog's growls grew louder, a mix of excitement and agitation. He could feel the adrenaline surging through him as he chased after Rex's powerful form. They burst into a small clearing, and Reed skidded to a halt, his breath catching in his throat. In the center of the clearing stood Rex, his stance alert and defensive. Before them lay a small makeshift shelter, hastily constructed from branches and leaves. It looked abandoned, but the scent of damp earth and something metallic lingered in the air. "What did you find?" Martinez asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she joined Reed. They both stared at the shelter, uncertainty swirling in their minds. Rex sniffed the ground, his nose working furiously as he took in the scents. "He might have used this place," Reed muttered, scanning the area for signs of life. "Let's check it out." They approached cautiously, the sound of the creek fading into the background as they focused on the shelter. Reed knelt down, looking for any clues that might suggest recent activity. If he's been using this as a hideout, there should be something. Clothing, personal effects, anything. Martinez began to circle the perimeter, her flashlight sweeping over the ground. "There," she called out, pointing to a small bundle partially hidden in the underbrush. "It looks like a backpack." Reed rushed over, his heart racing as he unearthed the bag. It was a child's backpack, bright pink with unicorn designs, and a sense of dread settled over him as he recognized it. "This belongs to Zoe Ramirez," he said, the name echoing like a death knell in his mind. "She went missing 4 months ago." The implications were staggering. They were on the right path, but the closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous their situation became. "We need to get this back to the command center immediately," Reed said, his voice steady. "They need to know we found her belongings." As they turned to leave, a rustling sound came from deeper within the shelter. Reed's heart raced as he motioned for Martinez to be quiet. They both froze, straining to listen. The rustling grew louder, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. "Get ready," Reed whispered, drawing his flashlight and aiming it toward the source of the noise. "On 3. Martinez nodded, her eyes wide. 1, 2. Before they could count to 3, a figure burst from the thicket. A small child, wild-eyed and panting, covered in dirt and leaves. "Help! Please, don't let him find me!" the child cried, her voice trembling with fear. Reed's heart dropped as he recognized the girl standing before them. It was Lily Morgan. "Lily!" he shouted, rushing to her side. "You're safe now. We're here to help you." The girl looked around frantically, her eyes darting from Reed to Martinez and then back to the trees. "He's coming. We have to go. He'll find us." "Who, Lily?" Martinez asked, kneeling to meet the girl's gaze. "Who's coming? Can you tell us?" Lily shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "The man with the dog. He said I wasn't supposed to tell anyone. He said I would be sorry." "Lily, you're not in trouble," Reed said, trying to keep his voice calm. "But we need to know what he looks like. Can you describe him to us?" She nodded, her small frame shaking with fear. "He's tall and wears a dark coat. His eyes they're like black holes. He's always watching. And there's a dog. A big black dog that helps him." Reed exchanged a glance with Martinez. They both knew they were running out of time. "We have to get you back to the command center. You'll be safe there. Can you do that for us?" Lily clutched Reed's hand, squeezing it tightly. "Yes, but we have to hurry. He knows I'm gone." Without a moment to waste, Reed and Martinez led Lily back through the underbrush, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. Rex stayed close, his instincts sharp, sensing the urgency of the moment. As they approached the edge of the clearing, Reed's heart raced. They had found Lily, but the danger was far from over. The man who had taken her was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Stay close, Lily," Reed instructed, glancing back to ensure she was following. "We're almost there." But just as they reached the tree line, a rustling sound erupted from the thicket behind them. Reed turned, instinctively drawing his weapon, as a figure emerged from the shadows. A tall man, his dark coat blending into the night, his expression twisted into a menacing grin. "Too late," he said, his voice chilling and cold. "You shouldn't have come here." The hunt had begun, but so too had the chase. Reed's heart pounded as he prepared to confront the predator who had haunted their community for so long. The night was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher.